The problem isn't necessarily a planning problem, it's a decision-making problem, and having all of the right pieces of information, all of the right facts to make the right decisions. And to make those right decisions, you've got to be able to test the scenarios. There may be three options. If you can't test, do a what if, simulate those three options, you can't fully understand the full impact of that. I think my tech friends would talk about digital twins. What you need is a digital twin, a representation of your labor model that allows you to plan several different what ifs and decide what is the best way forward for your customer, for your colleague, for your associate, for the shareholder. Those retailers that can plan in that way will be much, much more successful because they are making logical, sound, data-based decisions to drive the second half of the year.
Welcome to Storefront Science, the show where we decode the chaos of modern store operations.
We're bypassing the buzzwords to have honest conversations with the practitioners and executives who are actually shaping the industry. All right, welcome in everyone to a new episode of the Storefront Science Podcast. Today we are joined by Rory Graham, the VP of Customer Experience for UK, EMEA, and International here at Logile. Wanted to thank you, Rory, for joining us, and wanted to give you a second here to talk through your background and your careers. You've sort of built an entire career on workforce management in the retail industry.
Yeah, I suspect my career's way too long to talk about in this short intro as I'm getting quite old now. But my background is in retail. My background is in retail labor planning, colleague and associate scheduling is my passion. So when I retired from Walmart a couple of years ago, it was a natural thing to come and work with one of Walmart's partners, Logile, and continue conversations with customers across the UK and Europe, trying to help them solve some of the problems that they have in the labor planning and scheduling space.
Well, with all your expertise you have today, we kind of wanted to focus on some of the gaps we see across the retail industry and kind of get your point of view as to why things are still happening this way when there could be better ways out there. So the first kind of question we want to lead into is why are so many large retailers still trying to plan millions of labor hours using basic spreadsheets?
Oh, Google Sheets, those sorts of tools, they're really familiar to everyone. Everyone joining a retailer these days understands how to use a spreadsheet. So as folks join the industry, they tend to stick with things that are familiar. But the problem is when one spreadsheet starts to become 2, 10, 20, 100, and over time they build up in a way that becomes really, really difficult to manage, really difficult to track, to trace the changes that are made over time. So I think the time is probably right to make a change to something a little bit more systemic, a little bit more strategic, rather than a tactical change that can often be made in a spreadsheet.
I mean, I experienced that from my own side just in marketing. I think the amount of times we're working might be from different documents, trying to work on copy and information and all this stuff from different things. We're reading different books. I can imagine how complicated that can be from retailers working on labor planning and like how granular and how detailed it can get. If they're trying to find things they did a couple of versions or edits ago and they can't quite find it, major headache.
I think as well on a spreadsheet, as you get more detailed, as you get more focused, it becomes more difficult to keep track. If you think about copying and pasting a formula across a spreadsheet, it's really easy to get something wrong. And think about how you try to trace an error on a spreadsheet as you dig into a complex formula. A lot of smart people doing it, a lot of smart people using spreadsheets, but it's not the easiest way. It's not the simplest way to manage such a complex budget, which is usually the biggest budget that any retailer has to manage, biggest controllable cost anyway that a retailer has to manage.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then speaking about changes and making tweaks to those, a lot of times people want to have some type of sandbox, someplace to process new staffing models or process changes directly on their store. What are retailers looking to do in terms of safe sandboxes or test decisions? Are those, again, getting those out of the spreadsheets? Like, what does that look like now?
I think everybody thinks about it a little bit differently, but you've got to realize and understand that things are changing so fast within retail that it's only natural that we have to stop sometimes and say, what if? What if we operated this department, this bakery across different hours? If we opened an hour early, if we closed an hour late, what if we changed the way we present the stock to the stockers on the overnight shift? What if we changed the ratio of customers that go through self-checkout versus go through a manned register? All of those things are worth evaluating fully and correctly so that you understand the total impact on your business, the impact on the customer, the impact on the colleague and the associate, and the impact on the shareholder, because all of these decisions come with a cost or a saving. It's all about controlling that cost, not about cutting the cost. It's all about controlling the cost in a way that you're making the right decisions so that you're investing those labor dollars, those labor pounds in the right way to help grow your sales and improve your customer experience.
Yeah, I think both of those talking points lead to the idea of different ways of looking at that, like in siloed operation plans struggle. So when we talk like bigger picture in an organization, I know that we talk about internally a lot here that when finance, HR, operations, and technology is aligned, that we see better results long term. So why do you what, in your opinion, from what you've seen, why do you think that retailers still struggle sometimes with not planning in silos, and what do you think the solve is for that?
I think when you plan within a spreadsheet that is sent around, it's difficult to get away from that siloed approach. When you have a system that not everybody in the business can look at and see and understand the logic of the change, then it becomes a challenge. And everybody that has a part to play in this exercise has different reasons for that. So the finance team are interested in understanding how those costs are controlled. The HR team, the people team, they're really interested in understanding the impact on the colleague and on the associate, because we're trying to create a good experience for our associates and colleagues in terms of how they are scheduled and how they are planned. So that means a lot to the HR teams. And the operations teams, again, they're really interested in what that customer experience looks like. So really, I think if you can share the plan, then holistically it all comes together in a way that really drives benefit for everybody involved, the customer, the colleague, and the shareholder. And that's really, really powerful. And it's important that everybody has visibility. The operations team probably want to retain control, but everybody across the business should have visibility into those dashboards, into those plans, and understand what a slight change, a slight nuance in a labor plan can actually mean. And that helps the finance team plan the P&L better and helps the people in HR team plan the recruitment plan better. And really, ultimately, planning for the customer experience to be improved, which is what we all want within retail, I think, is a good customer experience.
Yeah, I think the customer experience and that plan that you keep talking about is so important. And it's really hard for retailers to get this right. And it's really hard to have a plan that you get out to everybody. They can all see it. And then also not have that it be the traditional set it and forget it annual budgeting plan. Like this is something where they need to be continuously planning, continuously updating and forecasting. And that's where it's really hard to get it out to everybody. And it's really hard to make sure it's not just set it and forget it. So how does the observe, adjust, and repeat planning loop actually work in real life? And how can retailers do better at that?
That's a great question, because that's something that a few years ago, setting and forgetting it was probably, when I started, that was exactly what we did. Maybe you looked at it quarterly, maybe you had a quarterly finance review. But really today, when you look at all of the different things across the world that are causing prices to change, inflation, deflation, changing on a regular basis, labor laws and regulations changing across different countries in different ways, across different times across the year, and different customer shopping patterns changing. People, buying online, picking up in store wasn't a great thing 3-4 years ago. Post-pandemic, that's increased dramatically. So the way people shop with us and the cost of our goods is changing on a very regular basis, which means that retailers need to change their plans on a regular basis. Got to remember, as prices change, That doesn't necessarily have a direct relation on the item count. And we drive labor based on items, on cases, on customers, not necessarily in dollars or pounds. So having that ability to flex and change your plan as the world around you changes means that you will be one of the more successful retailers because you're reacting to the customer, the economy, and the changing retail environment, I believe.
Yeah. And on that, I worked a lot of retail jobs when I was in college. Uh, in my personal anecdotal experience was that most of the time, when we looked at our upcoming schedule, there wasn't, a situation where we said, wow, we're going to be really understaffed that day. We're going to get crushed, right? Most of the time it was you show up to your shift and it's, why is the mall so busy today? Why are we getting crushed? Why do we not have enough coverage? So, I think we see high level that usually operators are finding out that their labor plan is failing retroactively. Then they see it on their P&L sheet, as well as, their employee experience. So, and customer experience for that matter. So how do retailers shift to a more proactive management style? So you just talked a lot about all the different factors. So how do retailers start accounting for those ahead of time and being more proactive in their management so that their stores are properly staffed and operating efficiently?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ryan. And I think what we're talking about is lead and lag indicators and trying to understand how we can use those to better execute the plan that we have. The P&L is, in most retailers, is typically a monthly thing, and that's a month looking back. That isn't going to help a lot, other than potentially tell you you've got more to make up in the year to go because you missed the plan looking backwards. The customer experience indicators that you talk about, in some retailers they're quarterly or biannual or annual. They're not, you're not necessarily picking up that customer experience on a weekly or a daily basis and reacting to it quickly. So I think it's important for retailers to be reforecasting on a regular basis and reforecasting the items, the cases, the real things that drive the work within the store. And as you reforecast those regularly, use some sort of tool, some sort of indication that helps you simulate in some way, run a what if on terms of if sales are trending up and items are trending up, what does that mean for the labor plan in the coming weeks as we look at things to take a UK perspective on things, which is where I'm sitting at the moment. But when you think about it, we've got a heat wave here that we're not used to. We've got the World Cup happening over in the US at the moment with England still involved in that. These are all things that are impacting on sales. People are going out and getting ready for watch parties, but they're also suffering from a weather that they're not used to. These sorts of things are happening the world over, and retailers need to be prepared and ready to reforecast, to react, and to better serve their customers by reacting in a more meaningful, timely way.
Yeah, I mean, I think to tie it all together, you just mentioned a lot of different factors again, and how to be more proactive. So as we're in the second half of 2026, I think retail's always been a really complicated environment, tight margins, a lot of different impacts from, you mentioned the weather, down to world events, to labor crises, to legal stuff. What, in your opinion, is the most, or if you could boil it down to one critical challenge for UK retailers right now, to finish out 2026, what do you think that is?
I think it's the same for UK retailers, US retailers, global retail is in the same position. The problem isn't necessarily a planning problem, it's a decision-making problem, and having all of the right pieces of information, all of the right facts to make the right decisions. And to make those right decisions, you've got to be able to test the scenarios. There may be three options. If you can't test, do a what if, simulate those three options, you can't fully understand the full impact of that. I think my tech friends would talk about digital twins. What you need is a digital twin, a representation of your labor model that allows you to plan several different what ifs and decide what is the best way forward for your customer, for your colleague, for your associate, for the shareholder. those retailers that can plan in that way will be much, much more successful because they are making logical, sound, database decisions to drive the second half of the year.
Makes a lot of sense. I think we're hearing, we've had a lot of conversations on the show this year, and I think we're seeing that same central theme reoccur. So, wanted to thank you, Rory, for jumping on and talking with us. I will placate to our UK audience with the USMNT knocked out. I am rooting for England. My mom has worked spent half her career in England. Her best friend is from there, so I am fully rooting for them. My son is a big Jude Bellingham fan, so to all our UK listeners, go England down the stretch here. So.
I have to say, as a Scotsman, but as a retailer at heart, I say go England because that's great for retail sales.
Hey, the Scots were. I'm located in Boston, and the Scots were a lot of fun when they were in the city here earlier last month. So
we enjoy a party.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for jumping on, Rory. And we'll hopefully talk to you again here.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you.